Black math! Give me some math and I'll give you some flack. Black math!
So we are going to do lesson 45. And this is stuff that you have done plenty of times before. We're going to talk about statistics. Range, median, mode, and mean. Okay, so nothing too new. So this week, we're just gonna do lesson 45. So we're just gonna do problem set 45 and just kind of start a little bit easier into the year. And then next week, I'm just gonna have 2 assignments instead of 3 that I would typically have for a week without a test. And then the following week will be a test week. So we'll do 2 assignments and a test, practice test and test. So, but yeah, still do the extra credit for coming up, but I'll remind you when we get there. Okay, so we're going to talk about statistics. So this is range, median, mode, and then the meanest thing I can ask you to do is find the mean, because it takes the most work. You add them all up and divide by the number of numbers, right? So when you get to these problems on your test, you don't want to skip these, because usually it's asking for all 4 things. So this question on a test would be worth 4 times as much as the other questions. So you're like, oh, I don't know how to do that. Don't do that, because you will miss a lot. All right. So let's just start with an example. So let's say dogs weigh, I think that's 10. Yeah, 10, 30, 8, 14, and 30 pounds. Okay, so I want to find the range, median, mode, and mean. Okay, what's the first thing you should do before you start any of these things? What's a good idea, Nathan? Yeah, put them in order, because there's several reasons you do that. First reason, because that's what you should do with all numbers, because it makes you feel better. But you will be able to answer these questions a lot easier if these are in order. So this is 8, 14.
Isn't it 10, 14?
Oh yeah, 8, 10, 14. Good job. You want a free problem set?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
30 and another 30, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Check the numbers. Count the numbers that you started with. Count the numbers that you ended with. Make sure it's the same number. All right, so I'm not going to put commas there, because I eventually have to find the mean, right? So I'm just going to add them anyway. So now I can find the range. The range is just max minus min. So that's just 30, the one on the right, minus the one on the left. So 22. Boom, you're done with the range. The median is the next easiest. The median is the one in the middle, right? So there's only one in the middle. So this is middle number, or average of middle numbers. So there is a middle number here because there's an odd amount of numbers. If there's an even amount of numbers, then you're not going to have a number in the middle. So for example, if there's another 30 here, these 2 numbers would be in the middle. So what happens if you have 2 numbers in the middle? What do? Nathan? easier way, find the average. That's how you find the number that's halfway between two numbers. So like, what's halfway between 18 and 20? 19, right? Well, that's easy. But what's 18 plus 20? 38. What's 38 divided by 2? 19. Did you guys know that? That's the fast way to find the average, or halfway between two numbers. That's what I used to do for years. I wasted my life just subtracting and then dividing by 2 and then adding. That's okay. Then I realized, hey, halfway between two numbers is the average of two numbers. Average of two middle numbers. So that's how you find the median. Of course, it's easy when you just have an odd number of numbers. So you just figure it out. It's 4 or 14. Okay, and then you got your mode. Your mode is your most often. So I always look at MO and mode and say most often. So the only number that appears more than once is 30. So that's your mode. And then your mean, again, is your average.
What if for both there's only like one number? What if there's all the numbers only appear once?
Great question. Then there's no mode. And you can have multiple modes. So if you have 2 8s and 2 30s, then you have two modes, 8 and 30. But if you have 2 8s and 3 30s, then it's just 30. Okay, so the number that appears the most, if any, if they appear, it has to appear more than once. Okay, and if all the numbers appear twice, then all the numbers are modes. Crazy, huh? Okay. So there's 3 different answers. There's a number, there's no mode, or there's multiple numbers. So the mean, we're going to add them all up. Divide by number of numbers. So what is that? Looks like I didn't even answer the question. Oh, 18.4. So when you do that math, you get 18.4. So a lot of times you're going to get a decimal or something weird when you find the mean because you're dividing. All right, but you shouldn't get any decimals or anything when you're finding the range, median, mode, unless you start with decimals, of course. Then you will have decimal answers, but you might. But the mean, add them all up, divide by the number of numbers. You guys know this, right? You guys good with these 4 concepts? Okay, so you're not gonna skip this question on a test. All right, now there is such a thing as, so when I say find the statistics, then you have to find these 4 things, okay? There is such a thing as meaningful statistics, okay? And I think that word meaningful is purposed, like it does have something to do with the mean. But when you have this example, here's example 1. Here's my data, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 3, 800. So it was looking pretty good, like everything was hanging around the same mean. So I'm thinking the mean is going to be somewhere between 2 and 3 because there's like 4 2s. There's only 1 4. Then there's 3 3s. So it's going to be somewhere between 2 and 3, right? If you found the mean of that. And if you put these in order, then you would have 2 2 2 2, 3 3 3, 4, 800. So you'd have 3 would be the median. So you got and then the mode is like 2. So the mode, median, and mean are all around 2 or 3. Okay? That's what we call meaningful statistics, when all those things line up. When the mode, median, and mean, those are meaningful statistics. But what is this 800 going to do to the mean of these 8, 9 numbers? What's it going to do? It's going to be crazy high, and it's not going to be a good reflection of these numbers. So I say, what's the average age of the people in this room? the age is going to be like 30 something. Does that reflect your age? No. Why is it going to be 30 something? Because of me. I ruined it. So what I call myself and what I call that 800 is called an outlier. Have you heard that word before? Outlier. We're not going to spend too much time with the outlier, but this is like the guy that doesn't belong. So it's kind of like the outlaw, the guy who doesn't obey the rules of the game, of the town. He's the outlaw. So this is the outlier. Now you can have a small outlier. You could have like a negative 800 or whatever. That can be considered an outlier. Now there is a mathematical equation that determines whether something is an outlier. But when you have 2, 3, 2s, 3s, 2, 4s, and an 800, then this is obviously an outlier, right? My age in this group of people would be an outlier, okay? So most of the time when you're trying to determine if something's an outlier, you just go with your gut. My gut says that's an outlier, okay? So let's see here. I'm not going to do another example of these things, but remember when you don't have any number repeating itself, any number appearing more than once, then there's no mode. Okay? All right. So one more example. This is example 3. This is the other kind of thing that you're going to run into. This is a little bit of backwards thinking, but that's what algebra is, right? Algebra is backwards thinking. So let's look at the mean. Let's say the mean of 5 numbers is 10. The mean of 5 numbers is 10, right? So we don't know what those numbers are, but they could be like all 10s, right? They could just be, if the mean of 5 numbers is 10s, well, the mean of 5 10s is 10, right? But we're just given the first 4. So the first 4 numbers are 2, 8, 11, and 14. So I'm going to say, what is the 5th number? Okay, so there's a way to do this algebraically, or there's a way to just think through this logically. So, but if you think backwards, what's the last thing you do to find the average of something? So you do 2 math things, right? When you find the average, what's the last thing you do? Nathan, what's the last thing you do?
Divide the added numbers by...
Right. So to find the average, you add up all the numbers and then you divide by the number of numbers. Well, we already know the number of numbers. Oh, sorry. Mean of 5 numbers. That's an important thing. Mean of 5 numbers is 10. Okay? So you know that there's already 5 numbers. So that's the number you divided by. So if you want to think backwards, if it's 10, how did you get 10 when you divided by 5? Well, what did you divide by 5 to get 10? Well, you didn't really do it, but now I'm thinking backwards. What did this mysterious person do to get 10 as the average? Well, to get the average, you add up all the numbers and you divide by the number of numbers to get the average, to get 10. So let's go backwards. If they just divided by 5 to get 10, how do you go backwards? Multiply by 5. So that means add up the numbers, divide by 5 to get 10. So if you multiply by 5, so 50 is what happens when you add up the numbers. So these 5 numbers have to add up to 50, right? So when you say the average of 5 numbers is 10, then you already know the sum of the numbers. It's 50. So if the average of 3 numbers is 7, what's the sum of the numbers? If the average of 3 numbers is 7, did you just mouth 21? Then you're right. Yeah, you just multiply. So if the average, you multiply the average times the number of numbers to get the sum of numbers. All right, so that's backwards thinking. But so that's how we kind of think through it logically. So that means the sum is 50. So that makes this pretty easy. So that means we have the 2 plus 8 plus 11 plus 14. Well, so far, that equals 35, right? But it has to equal 50, right? So what plus 35 is 50? 15. Okay, so that's how you think through it logically. Let me show you how to do it algebraically. This is the way I would do it, because I love algebra. So if I say the average equals sum divided by number of numbers, right? Well, now I'm just going to fill in what I know. I know the average. It's 10. And so I'm going to fill in what I know about the sum. So the sum is going to be 2 plus 8 plus 11 plus 14 plus x. So I'm going to choose a variable because I don't know the fifth number. And usually the question that's being asked is your variable, okay? All divided by the number of numbers. Well, I know that. I know there's 5. So now I'm going to solve this equation. The first thing I can do to get x by itself is to get rid of that 5. How do you get rid of something being divided? Multiply, right? So we're going to multiply both sides by 5. So we get 50 equals 2 plus 8 plus 11 plus 14 plus x. Okay? So I'm going to follow the steps to solve equations, clean up the left side and clean up the right side separately. So that one's already cleaned up. Now we can just combine like terms. So 50 equals 35 plus x. All right, and then the third step is eliminate constant from variable side. So get rid of that 35. X equals 15. So I used algebra to really, I forgot about average. Like halfway through this, I forgot that I was finding something about average, like a missing number, because algebra does the thinking for you. So you don't have to really think about what you're doing actually when you do algebra. The algebra does the thinking for you. That's why it's a good tool, because algebra, the way algebra thinks is perfect. The way you think is not necessarily perfect, okay? You just have to choose the right algebra. And once you do, let the algebra do the work. This is easy for some people, depending on the way they think, not depending on their intelligence. And it's difficult for some people, depending on the way they think and the way their brains work. It's not based on intelligence, okay? So some people can't process that way, but some people can, okay? What happened? Just giggly. All right. Does that feel okay? This is the most challenging part about this lesson, is just finding the missing number in the number of numbers. Okay. You can do this if you are, for example, if you're trying to calculate your grade and you got a bunch of test scores and you need to end up with an A in your test grades. So you can do this by, okay, well, by the end of the semester, I will have taken 5 tests, okay? And I need to get a 90 average on those 5 tests. And so I've taken 4 tests. I got a 70 on one. I got a 90 on another. I actually got 101 on one because of my extra credit. I was pretty proud of that one. I've got an 85 on one. So you got an 85, 101, and did I get a 90? Yeah, and a 70. So that's okay, if the average of the 5 numbers has to be 90 to get an A, here's the first 4 numbers, then you have to find the 5th. So there's real life application here, okay? Now, I spent a lot of my college years trying to do this kind of math because I'm like, okay, I've got a lot of stuff that needs to be done. What can I not do and still get an A or maybe a B in my non-math classes? It's okay if you get B's in non-math classes. Just don't get B's in math classes. That was my philosophy. So I did. You don't spend too much time trying to do that, but do your best, obviously, as much as you can. But sometimes you have to make some choices, and so you have to like figure out what can I get away with. All right. Any questions? You guys feel like you can do both of these, all four of those? We talked about that. And then finding the missing number in a group of numbers. Okay. If you need more help, you can look at this video or you can look through there's step-by-step examples in this book. And so this is example 3. So look at that if you need more help with that. Okay? All right. So I think that's all I'm going to do today.